In this episode of Château Capers, I rest my arm on an invisible box. I make wallpaper angels, and Jane finds a whopper in the garden. What a beautiful morning, looking south down towards the mountains. This is our lake. Well, ecologically speaking, it's probably just a pond because, well, there are a few rules, but all of them say this is just a pond. But because we live in a chateau, it's far nicer to say, oh, wouldn't it be lovely to pop down, take tea by the lake? So we call it a lake, but it's a pond. Anyway, it's huge. It's still like half an acre. But the problem with this pond is there's no water in it. And it's almost November, so that's not normal. There are a couple of reasons why the lake has dried out. So over the years that it's been here, it's with all the leaves falling in each year, it sort of mulches down, and so the pond slowly gets shallower and shallower. And that's happened over a long period of time, and so here we are now, and even when the lake's full, the pond, this part where I'm standing is only ever slightly deeper, probably knee deep, I'd have said. So sedimentation is one problem, but that causes another problem in that the lake or the pond will then become shallower, and shallower water heats up quicker and evaporates faster. And it's been a very hot summer, so we know that a lot of this might be to do with groundwater levels and the intense heat and evaporation, all the trees desperate for water, so sucking it up as fast as they can. So that hasn't helped. That's probably one of the main factors in this. But there is another factor. There has been an enormous amount of damage caused by ragondins, as the French call them, or coipu, as perhaps we call them in the UK, or nutria, maybe we call them nutria. They have several different names, but it's all the same thing. They're a South American rodent, and they're very large. They're fully grown, they're about that big, plus their tail. And they sort of resemble beavers, I suppose. They're quite similar to beavers in size and shape. However, they cause a massive amount of damage. And the banks of the pond are covered with giant holes. That one is absolutely huge. And the pond has a largish island, and it's riddled with holes in the bank that go all the way through from one side of the island to the other. The erosion to the banks that they have caused is immense. Here, for example, is one of the largest of their holes, and this shelf along here, we last year over the winter into the spring, we saw like a family of them all disappearing under there, sunning themselves on that ledge. A few days ago, I decided to dig out some of the mud of the bank and stuff it into these holes. And I basically blocked that hole up almost completely. And I blocked that hole up and some holes over there. And then I came back there a couple of days later and found that they'd all been dug back out. So they're still active, they're still around here, but they're only apparent at night, because I'm guessing perhaps in the daytime, well, either they're hiding in their holes, or in the daytime perhaps they've gone back to the river, which is a couple of 100 meters in that direction. One solution I've come up with is to stuff the holes with logs. And I don't know whether this will work, but I'm hoping it will help.
Upstairs, the creaky bedroom has been through a lot already. The walls were stripped of the old wallpaper, we ripped out the creaking floorboards and laid new ones in their place. We've created an ensuite shower room, some completion required. Now we're turning our attention to the decor, and that's where the fun really starts.
We've got an idea of what we want to do, but I definitely don't understand what's required to achieve that. We've got, it turns out, clay walls in this room. So we've been taking off wallpaper, and then the plaster's come away, and what we're left with is clay walls, which are on the one hand very interesting, but on the other hand a bit disconcerting to know how to work with them. It looks like the plaster isn't going to adhere terribly well.
So I came up with an idea of what if we panelled this wall and had it quite a dramatic look. And Jane's response was no.
That's not quite true. I love panelling at the wainscot kind of height. I love that.
What's a wainscot?
Well, I think that's what it's called. Wainscoting is what it's called when it's at that height, I think. Anyway, I love that. I'm super into that, but it took me a while to buy into Rory's vision, which
So Jane said no, and I thought, okay, well that was that then. And then all of a sudden Jane was talking about panelling, and I said, well, how are you making panelling like that work when it's just down there? And unbeknownst to me, she'd gone back to the full height panelling for part of the room.
Yeah, so I've already bought the wallpaper to go on that wall, and so that in my mind that was what that was going to be. But then looking at the fireplace, I thought, oh, that would be, Rory's right, that would be a really lovely thing to panel up to the ceiling around, with the fireplace as the central focal point of this wall. And then, yeah, Rory, you seem to think that would enable us to cope with the vagaries of the wall structure we've got.
Yeah, it should be. That should be fine. We can batten the wall out so that it's so that when we put ply or whatever against it, then that runs straight rather than following any ripply contours. We have sections, so you have section. This used to be a doorway, the wood around it, so that's something to screw to. Yeah. And then a larger section over the fireplace, so you maybe put a big mirror in or some sort of featured art. And then in that corner on the other side of the door that's here, there'd be a little mini section as well. I mean, that would complete that.
I think so. So I'm really excited about making much more of a feature of these deep alcoves that the windows are in by quite simply framing them with sections of panelled wesleys,
So you were talking about possibly trying to cut this out?
Well, I love window seats, and one of the thoughts was, could we have a window seat here? But then that would have to come out, and I changed my mind. I just don't want to even go there because it really worries me to dismantle this. It's embedded in the wall.
Mm-hmm. Well, what you could do is just put a bench here.
Yeah.
And then you've got a window seat that's movable.
I thought, well, actually, a little surface, you put your book on it, a drink or whatever. Let's leave that. And yeah, exactly. I thought maybe a nice period love seat kind of banquette thing there would be better. So yeah, so we're leaving that, and we're going to, so we're panelling up to the ceiling here, and then we're going to start some panelling there that continues around the room.
So if we were doing the wainscoting or whatever it's called, we'll check that that's the right term. So that would be along here as well, and this would be painted?
Probably, yes. Same colour as the panelling on this side.
And considering that panelling is going to be quite a feature, this is going to be the feature wall.
And that's going to have wallpaper on it.
That's going to have wallpaper.
What I'm really heartened by is your confidence that we can deal with these tricky walls.
We can deal with anything.
You heard it here first. We can deal with anything.
So there, that's
we've got a bit of a plan.
We've got a bit of a plan.
And I've got some work to do to start with taking off more wallpaper.
Yes.
At this time of year, we would expect the pond to have almost completely refilled by now, but we haven't had a lot of rain. It's difficult to know exactly how much damage to the pond the koipu are causing, and that's because there are a couple of things that they could be doing. If the bank has sort of a clay protection layer, then if they're digging through it and there's a way for the water to seep out, then that will help drain the pond a little bit quicker. Also, all the mud and the clay that they're pushing out of their holes is just going onto the bed of the pond, and so wherever they dig their holes, then
that area around there gets a little bit shallower, which will in turn affect the temperature of the water and the speed at which it evaporates. So they aren't helping. I'm not an ecologist, I'm not an environmentalist, I don't know the solution. I also think that perhaps at some point, and bearing in mind this would be a very expensive job, one that we certainly can't afford at the moment, we might have to look at having the pond dredged a bit, and that would be tons and tons of clay and mud or silt, whatever, just scooped out and taken away. I'm not sure where it'd be taken to. That'd be the expensive part, having it removed, but having it taken away to give the pond a little bit more depth, which will hopefully mean that it doesn't dry up completely in the summer, because we have frogs all over. If you've watched our videos regularly, you'll probably have heard the frogs, and they are just in the trees and in the garden around. You can hear them at night sometimes, and they've got nowhere to go, so we keep finding them trying to go into our swimming pool, which isn't good for them because it's salty. So as it stands, far from being the idyllic, beautiful pond that we had hoped for, it's just a bit of a marshy bog at the moment, and it's a bit of an eyesore. There's going to be a lot of work to get this back to how it should be, but that's a job for the future. For now, we're just going to have to let it do what it does, because there's nothing we can do. It's going to be an expensive project, one that hopefully we'll have the funds for in the future, but until then, I'm afraid we'll have to let nature take its course. Before moving on to our next big project, we took care of some of the small jobs we'd been avoiding, like refitting a rainwater diverter on the conservatory. So that funny little looking thing is a drain pipe, and it just pushes the water off the conservatory away from the chateau, so it doesn't run down the wall. You can see that this behind the ladder is very stained and mossy because it's had a leak before, and so there's been a lot of water dripping down there. It didn't help that I took that off when we needed scaffolding up there last year and didn't put it back on, but that's my fault. So that's back on. It just means when it rains heavily, if you stand here, it'll be like singing in the rain. You'll just get absolutely soaked. One tiny job done. The next tiny job was to steal a tile from the gazebo. The barn is in desperate need of some matching replacement tiles, and we were hoping these ones would fit.
How does it look?
That looks like a match. So these are the Casabon tiles that make up the whole of the barn roof. And these ones, as you've seen, are from the gazebo. But they're not the same tile, but they are a match, it would appear. So if that's all fine, then we can go ahead and take a row off, and then I can start fixing the barn roof in the areas, especially over our wood store, so that the wood doesn't get soaked again like it did last year.
With a match seemingly confirmed, we got on with the theft. I will replace the tiles on the gazebo, but for now, the barn roof is more important.
Whilst the tiles are dry and safe to walk on, the moss was wet and slippy, so I scrabbled my way through. And that was another small job ticked off the list.
Look at this, it's a whopper. One normal size, perfectly formed, slightly oddly shaped courgette, and one gigantic one. You can soup that up. You can live on it for days.
We've had a bit of wind overnight, and I don't mean me personally. This has happened. Well, we need to buy a winter cover for the pool, so that's going to be the next big expense. But it doesn't look like there's been any damage, it's just blown in. But I hope I can get it out without me going in. That's it all sorted, but I can tell just by the amount of leaves in here that without a winter cover this is going to get very dirty very quickly as all the leaves start to fall off the tree. So that's going to be quite an urgent job we need to get sorted. The other problem is, of course, the orangery roof. A lot of water gets rained on that when it rains, and then it all just runs straight off. Whilst it doesn't go straight into the pool, it lands right next to the pool, and so that's going to start draining in. It's going to be a big problem. So what I'm probably going to have to do in the relatively near future before winter is to put the scaffolding tower up and maybe try to put some guttering right the way across the front of it, just to direct it probably over into this corner. And we might have to try and get a big water butt or something to go in that corner, but we'll want something that looks a bit nice because it'll always be on display. So that's something to think about.
Meanwhile, back to the creaky bedroom design.
I had a look at some panelling, as in I looked at lots of pictures of panelling and tried to find a design that I felt was right for this room. Not too ostentatious, but that would be transformative for this room. So I had the idea in my mind what I wanted to do, and I thought the best thing is to start drawing it on the walls, which is what I started to do. And I found it's actually quite cumbersome and difficult, and then I realised it'd be much easier to do it digitally. So that's what I did, in fact. Having never done any wallpapering before, I seem to be drawn to wallpaper with birds, a bird motif, so obviously flowers and plants. Sorry, let's get this the right way around. This is around. Flowers and plants. But I seem to just find birds very, very beautiful as well. So I chose this wallpaper ages ago. I bought a job lot of wallpaper because there was an offer on, you got 10% off when you first order, so I ordered loads of stuff. So I bought this ages ago to match in with the fireplace and trying to create a more masculine feel to this room because the other rooms are rather feminine. So this is going to be the feature wall back here with this wallpaper on it. So whatever colours we have for the panelling are going to have to tone in with this design.
I started with a photo of the fireplace wall with some crude lines to indicate the layout of the panels. We know how wide our hardwood ply will be, so that guided the design. Then, with the magic of AI, the wall is panelled and painted in a colour of my choice. This gives amazingly quick results and enabled me to show Rory what was in my mind, including some example embellishments. The AI did not put panelling into the door alcove, but that's a minor detail. Then I drew some lines for rendering panelling around the window. This time the AI foreshortened and changed the layout of the room quite a bit and removed the windowsill. However, it gives a good starting point from which we can agree and build the design. Rory's comment was, "I just hope I can build it." Me too. Watch this space. If you've watched this far, then please like, subscribe and click the hype button if you can find it. Thanks for watching and we'll see you next time.